I want to let you know a little bit about me. The job I'm the most proud of is I'm a mom. I'm not just a mom to my wonderful daughter that I actually gave birth to. I tend to take in children. So this is my niece and her son, who's now 4. And then I also took in a cousin, and those are the ones that had the guts to stick with me. I tend to have people in and out a lot. So as Christina said, I'm always looking for ways to do things that are good for people, but also so that I can help more. So that's my motivation. This is a picture of a house I flipped in Denver. This was building the garage in the back, and then that's the front when it was done. So I've done various aspects of real estate investing. I have a lot of knowledge of what is needed when it comes to being an investor, but then I also really care. So a little bit about what's going on in the rental market. In July, the median rent was $1,879. They actually thought in July it was going to hit $2,000. It didn't, which is good. But it was a 16.7% increase month over month from the previous year. Different areas had different numbers, and I'm going to be really direct. The more I looked at numbers, there was numbers that indicated all kinds of things. But this was CNN. I'm not saying they're the end-all be-all, but they're a credible news agency. So that was the number I went with. Here locally, there was some areas where the numbers were even as high as 35% increase year over year. So this is a little more information that I found from Realtor.com. 2-bedroom apartment increased 13.7% year over year. The average home price increased 18.83%. Massachusetts and New York, 35%. So the reason I'm giving you those numbers is just to give you an idea of what people face. This is not just low-income housing. This is not people who don't have a good job. This is not people who had their car, well, they might have, but that, they had their car repossessed. This is impacting a large segment of the population. Low-income housing accounts for 25% of housing. Affordable housing, 56% of renters in California pay more than 30% of their income for rent, more than 30%. And that slide actually said 52% before today. I was looking at numbers, and there was a study in August that was released, and it's 56% pay more than 30%. So as investors, a lot of times your attitude is, if you don't have enough income, at least 3 times the income, I'm not going to rent to you. And yet there's 56%. So when you're walking down the street, 50% of the people around you are paying more than 30% of their income for rent. What that's led to is that has led to initiatives for affordable housing. And the government getting involved in your real estate business is every investor's nightmare. I understand that. And yet, there's a situation. We have 56% who are paying more than 30% of their income for rent. So one of the things that's occurred is there's some cities that are requiring security deposit alternatives. That is an effort to try to handle some of the cost that is involved when people want to go rent a property, they want to upgrade, etc. A situation that I just heard about, it was at the multifamily event. Was it at the multifamily event? Sanjeev? Yes. He was telling about a situation where he purchased a property. The family was living in a 1-bedroom unit with 3 kids. I have a 3-bedroom house with 5 of us. I'm thinking of a 1-bedroom. I'm like, oh my goodness. So he had the money. This individual had the money to move into a bigger property. He just didn't have the deposit. Sanjeev, in purchasing processes or purchasing properties, worked something out, was able to move this family into a 2-bedroom house or 2-bedroom apartment. They were very happy, had a little more space. But that's why cities like Cincinnati and Atlanta have put ordinances in place that require investors to offer a security deposit alternative. Again, the government's answer is never good. It always has unexpected consequences. In my opinion, I prefer to see groups like this come up with solutions than having the government do that. New York City has a list of approved vendors of security deposit alternatives. There is a movement, it's called the Renter's Choice Movement, that is leading some of these initiatives. For the security deposit alternatives, there's 3 aspects to both Cincinnati and Atlanta's ordinances. The security deposit has to be less than 1 month's rent. One city was 50%, the other one was 60% of 1 month's rent. So if you want your people to pay up front, you can only ask for them to pay either 50% or 60% of 1 month's rent. The second option, if you want them to pay a full month in the security deposit, you have to offer payments, either 3 months of payments or 6 months of payments. And having been an owner and had renters, a lot can happen in 6 months and you're not really protected. The third option was a security deposit alternative insurance product. And there's a few. So being in the state of California, it does seem like California adopts these types of things. They're generally leading edge in doing that. So this could be something that you guys would be facing soon. So it's good to have information on what to expect. So what are security deposit alternatives? It is an insurance product. Here's some of the companies that are doing these. It's different than lease coverage. There's some similarities. Lease coverage just covers the lease. These actually cover the damage that a tenant can cause. They can also cover missed payments, but they also cover the damage. Security deposit bonds. The majority of products out there are bonds. First question, how many people here know what a bond is? Like, you really understand it, you know how it works? Raise your hand if you know how it works, like you know it. I see these 2 up here. Okay, 2 people out of this room knows what a bond is. Well, I explained it to her, so she doesn't count. No, but I was talking to Christina, and I asked Christina, I'm like, do you really understand what a bond is? And she's like, so.
Well, it works this way, though, and that's what you need to tell them.
Exactly. So my reason in pointing that out is if you guys don't know what a bond is, do you think your tenants know what a bond is? Exactly. And so the consequences of a bond are going to not be fully understood by the tenant, most likely. So the benefits of a bond is the amount of the bond. So like if you have a $5,000 bond, that money is available and it will cover all damage and also missed rents up to the bond amount. So that's a pro. That's a good thing. The cons, the tenants might not understand the impact of a bond. A bond, this is the Aneissa version. This is the Aneissa dictionary of bonds. A bond is basically you're paying to have a line of credit. That's it. You're giving somebody money and they're saying, okay, thank you for that money. Now you have a line of credit. You have the right to have things go against this line of credit, which means the tenant will be pursued for damages. That can be a big issue. You have tenants that already are struggling. They're unemployed for 6 weeks. They can't pay their rent. They're behind. It goes against this bond. Now the bond company comes after them. They have this bond and they have a need to get into another property or catch up on rent or whatever. So that can be a problem. Several of the bond companies, the funds are pooled. This is with a lot of the larger organizations. They'll pool the funds. The problem with that, I was at the big National Apartment Association convention called Apartmentalize, and big guys there. And some of the people walking around, they were like, yeah, we ran out of money out of the pool and there was no coverage. So they can be pooled funds, and the owner could be left high and dry, thinking that they were protected and they're not. Another option is a security deposit insurance. A bond is an insurance product. Legally, it's an insurance product. You have to be licensed as an insurance agent to sell it. Security deposit insurance is insurance. You always want to check and see who's backing it. Our product, by the way, we do insurance, just so you know. Our product is backed by an A+ rated carrier. There's no pooling of funds. There's multiple months of coverage, depending on what you as the owner want. And tenants don't get surprised months down the road with an unexpected line of credit that they didn't realize they had. And tenants understand insurance. We all have cars. We understand insurance. I actually see this kind of, we just got a dog. He's now 20 weeks old, and we got pet insurance. First time in my life I've had pet insurance. I actually realized that our product is a little more like pet insurance. Like, they kind of expect you're going to use it, you know, so it's structured that way. Some of the cons when you have renters is the renters may not feel that they have skin in the game. At this moment, this is a new concept. What I suspect will happen down the road is it will be kind of like car insurance. There'll be some database somewhere, and if you screwed over the insurance company as a tenant, you're not going to be able to get that insurance, and then you'll have to come up with the full deposit. So that's a little long term, and that could be a concern. The other con is there could be limits on some situations if it's intentional damage versus accidental damage, or if it's damage due to lease violations, like those puppies and kitties, like mine. Just saying. I'm not your tenant. No, I'm just kidding. So those are some of the pros and cons for the security deposit insurance. Any questions in that? Did that make sense in regards to the bonds versus security deposit insurance?
You said with the bond option that the tenant is still held responsible.
Yes.
So I have a bond, I'm paying $100 a month for my insurance, and then I destroy the apartment and I leave. The bond company pays the landlord for whatever I messed up in their house, and then the bond company comes after the tenant to mess up their credit or get that money.
They go after him to get they pursue them for that money.
Okay.
So and that is like, quote unquote, the right thing when somebody's intentionally messing up the property. However, I know this to be true because this insurance company is willing to back it. I preach to my kiddos all the time, if the insurance company will cover it, it's a good risk. So like smoking, you will die because they don't cover you or they charge you more. With this, the majority of tenants are not causing catastrophic damage. That is an unusual situation. So yes, if you knew that this tenant's likely to cause catastrophic damage, first of all, you wouldn't rent to them. But second of all, if you did, yeah, a bond would make sense because they're going to come after them. The majority of tenants don't do that. So it's just something to be aware of. What was your question?
I was just questioning the second one was intentional damage, because that's why I have the deposits.
Exactly.
Because if they want to, have a crazy party and throw slugs to the wall, that's intentional damage. And if it doesn't cover it, then that sort of would deter me. Not the bond part, but the insurance
Yeah,
part.
exactly. I totally get it.
That's where it's like, well, what would be the point then?
Yeah. So that can happen. Again, statistically, that's the exception, not the rule. You're going to want to know that the company that you're working with, kind of like the pet insurance, that they're okay with paying the claims. And the insurance company is going to protect themselves. They're going to say, if your tenant comes in and burns the house down and rips the sheetrock off the walls or whatever, I know everybody's skin crawled. All the investors in here, they're like, what? The insurance company wants to say, okay, so that is criminal. And that's not, we need to go to the property insurance or go a different route. That doesn't fall into what we cover. So in some situations, that could occur. But again, statistically, that's not likely to happen. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I'm just saying that's why I have the deposit
Yeah.
is for intentional damages.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So to me, that doesn't seem like it's of value.
For most of your properties, it would be of great value. In an unusual situation where somebody did that, then you could potentially run into issues. Now, with our carrier, we've had those conversations because those are the questions investors have. And they're like, we know we're going to pay claims. We're not here to not pay claims. We're here to expand this. We're looking long term. We want to launch this. We want it to be a big thing. So we're not here to fight with investors about claims. Does that make sense? Okay. And one of the things, having been an investor, one of the things that I have awareness around is so you keep $1,000 so that they do have skin in the game. And then you allow the rest to be a security deposit insurance. You could structure it however it made you feel good. Because I also talk with investors who only charge a $500 security deposit, period. Like no matter what, that's what they do. And they're successful. So there's a lot of opportunities on how you would want to structure it. Now I'm going to show you why you'd want to do it anyway. Institutional investors, they've embraced it. So, like I said, I was at Apartmentalize, Greystar, Cushman & Wakefield, other big names. I thought of those too, so I threw them up there. They're using it. Why? Why are they doing that? What do they know? So let me show you. So, in the race for maximizing profits, portfolios, and this is really multifamily properties, they're driven by cap rate and NOI. Unit turnover costs, that also has an effect, comes in there behind those. I'm going to show you some specifics. I know this is really hard to see. If you want it, I will send it to you. This is cap rates for properties that sold, and I think they were financed, or no, because it was from CoStar, so I think it's like all-encompassing, but it came from Chase. It was a list of cap rates in the Los Angeles area. The low is 2%, the high was 5%, and everything in between. So I just wanted to show you that so that when I show you these next few slides, you know I'm actually dealing with real numbers. So NOI, which is net operating income. Is there anybody here that doesn't know what NOI is? Good. If you just don't want to raise your hand, definitely Google it. It's basically your income minus your expenses is your net operating income. So I just was playing with numbers, and these don't mean anything. I know they're kind of random. If you have 33 units and they rented for $3,000 a month, and I just noticed that that's a period. We're in Europe for a minute, and then we're back to the US. You would have $1,188,000 in income. Let's just pretend that your expenses are $500,000. So your NOI, your net operating income, would be $688,000. 5% cap rate, your property would be valued at $13.7 million. Now, we all know that properties are actually worth what someone's willing to pay, which is how cap rate is established. But for argument's sake, if it was a 3% cap rate, it would be valued at pretty much $23 million. So that would be the value of the property based on the NOI. Any questions? I know you're like, why? Okay, so 33 units with security deposit alternatives. If you had $3,000 rent plus $3,000 in security deposit insurance coverage, The majority of the policies are between 10 and 15%. Some of the bonds are charging even more, but I used 15% because it's kind of in the middle there. So 15% of $3,000 of coverage, which would be 1 month, that would be $450 annually or $37.50 monthly. Now here's what these institutional investors are doing. They're saying if you choose not to have to come up with a security deposit, we're going to have you pay $3,150. That's a random number. It's random. Instead. And then that will cover the insurance cost. After deducting administrative costs and the cost of your policy, that's an additional $100 per unit of NOI. So now your NOI is $727,600. 5% cap rate, you're now going from valuing your property at $13 million to $14 million. At a 3% cap rate, you're going from $22 million to $24 million. That's one of the reasons they're doing it. Now, there's another aspect to this. Let me see. I don't know if oh yeah, I did. Okay. How do I go back, Christina? I can't remember how to go back. Do what? Back? That's okay. I got it. Nope, it's okay. I got it. Okay. So when you're dealing with multifamily, if you have 1 to 4 units, you get a loan. It's for 20 years, 30 years, and you just hang out, and that's cool. If you're doing multifamily, in case you didn't know this, you're going to have to refinance your property or sell it. Every 3 to 7 years, people typically either refinance their property or they sell it. And they make money doing it. The way they do that is they do things to increase the value of the property. And in 3 to 7 years, if they refinance it, they may get cash out of the property, or they may sell it, take that cash, and get more properties. So this is one of the things that the institutional investors are using to maximize the terms of the loans when they have to refinance or pull cash out or sell it. And when you're talking thousands of properties, you can imagine the difference it makes in income. And that's how they grow their portfolios. Now, the other cost that they're avoiding is turnover costs. I'm just going to tell you, I really hate this slide. I have a marketing director, and if I tried to do my own slide, she would probably shoot me. She would give me a look. I told her what to put on here. She put it on here, and then when I saw it afterwards and I had left work, I was like, ooh, I don't like this slide. So unit turnover costs. When you're turning over a unit, what I've heard, is like in the state of California, there's certain things that the landlord can't charge the tenant for as part of the security deposit. And I was actually talking with Christina, and we talked about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, because what I remember you saying, and I want to verify this, is that you pretty much just charge your tenants for cleaning fees.
Yeah, when I had units here in Southern California, which I've had started over 20 years ago, I started having units, and I stopped having units in like 2008. So what I found was that my property manager, I found them to be very good company, their preference and what they would do is effectively say, any damage to the unit, any dirty carpets, any dirty walls, they didn't charge for the repainting, what they charged for was a cleaning fee, because the state of California doesn't require that you prove a cleaning fee. That any other damages you want to withhold from the security deposit, the state of California, if they go to tenants' rights, will require us to prove it. So my concern, my frustration being a Southern California landlord was that effectively I'd be putting in $1,500, $2,000 into revamping a unit, and I was withholding a cleaning fee from their security deposit and giving them the rest back.
So your cleaning fee could be $1,000?
No, my cleaning fee was, my cleaning fee, $150, $200.
That's the one, that was it?
That was it.
There's a useful life. It depends how long the tenant is in the unit for. There's paint is 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what carpet.
Reasonable wear and tear.
Yeah, there's all these.
13 or 10, 8 to 10 for carpet.
8 to 10 for carpet. There's a bunch of different.
Yeah, there was a bunch of different things. So Christina, her property management company was like, forget it, we're just not even gonna deal with that. Now, so I was curious because I wanted to know, I did all my real estate in Colorado, so I wanted to know, okay, so you hear about California, let me check this out. Well, when I looked at the actual rules, I was looking at the government website, it was very similar to what I know to be true in Colorado. Like, it was very similar, it was pretty much same, apple to apples. So then what that made me realize is someone was interpreting it differently. As Christina mentioned, she talked about tenant rights. Somebody files a claim. Somebody's going to look at that, and that could be interpreted differently. I know investors that I've talked to here in Southern California that they push that envelope. They're like, oh no, we charge for this, we charge for this, we charge for this, and they like look to see what they can charge for. However, you can have a tenant dispute, and then if you have properties in different states, you're looking at the nuances of each state. What is this one tenant friendly? Is this one require different things? Is the carpet 8 years? Is it 12 years? What do you have to do? I don't know what the tenant dispute process is like, but anytime I've had to get involved with anything like that, it's very time consuming and it takes up a lot. It costs a lot in one way or another. One of the things that security deposit alternatives do is it smooths that out. You don't have to have as much attention on it because it's not a security deposit. So they're not going to be going to tenant rights. They're not going to be saying this is not acceptable. Now, go on ahead.
So the security deposit, these alternatives, normally the renter would get back his security deposit. With these new, they won't get any money back.
They don't pay any money.
Well,
They pay maybe a monthly fee for the insurance, or they pay more rent for the option not to have to come up with a security deposit. So you're not tracking the security deposit and you don't have to give them anything back because they're paying a fee.
So then the other thing, the whole beginning, why is rent thing going up? What is pushing that up to make this whole industry? Because this is a whole new industry, right?
So rent has been going up. Like, that's just been happening. It is an accepted, known, I hate using the word fact because everybody always has a different opinion, but it's accepted that there's a shortage of housing. There's not enough houses. It's totally supply and demand. There's just not enough houses. And so that causes the prices to go up. And the reality is that people have to come up with the money. They don't have, in the typical standard scenario, people don't have another option.
Right.
So they find a way.
Right.
It's just not always easy or comfortable. Yeah. So did that answer your question? Okay. Were you going to ask a question?
So landlord pays for the insurance and charges the tenant more rent.
That is very common. That is an option.
So when, let's say there is damage to the unit, the landlord will put an insurance claim in?
Yep. File a claim. Yep. Just like with your car insurance.
Okay.
Yeah.
When a tenant moves out, will the insurance company pay for like cleaning costs and like little damages, like paint or something?
If it's not wear and tear, they'll pay for it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So you can't just rehab the whole property and charge it to the insurance. But if it is damage, you can. Example, if the carpet, if they've been in there for a little while, or the carpet's older and it's matted, no. If there's a big stain and the carpet's a year old, yes.
And so when an owner goes to refinance their rental property, they can use the insurance, the cost they're charging the tenant, like including insurance, as proof that, of the cap rate so they can get refinanced.
It becomes part of their income.
Gotcha.
On the balance sheet, that would be part of their income, and then the cost of the insurance would be an expense. But you would still be.
Renting out like store spaces above the parking spaces, or you're renting out security deposit, then you're charging them a fee for that privilege to not do it. But you still have an expense called the insurance. If you have that greater income, you still have a fee.
Do you think it like equals out, or does it look better? Does it look better that you're having a larger income?
My experience as a property, as a multi-unit investor and owner is that if the more fees that I can list that I'm showing as positive income is above and beyond my expenses, then yes, the more net income, so my property's worth more.
And just a little bit of information, because I know this is not a multifamily group. In the multifamily arena, they are actually pretty aggressive in finding ways to increase. They want to make it beneficial to the tenant, but they're pretty aggressive in finding ways that they can make more income. Like Christina said, they may build storage units on the property, which then they have the capital expense, they have to pay for that, and then rent them out to the tenants. That's something that they do. And then there's other ways that they look for, like they could say, you can have a pet, but it's an additional $50 a month. Things like that. They look for ways that they can increase that NOI, that net operating income.
It's sort of a win-win for the tenant owner.
So yes, though a lot of investors don't see that. So we're getting to that next. So then there is the opportunity. I'm not going to say this is certain, but there is the opportunity of smoothing out some of the turnover costs, which also can have an effect on your refinance. And that is, as I said, that's one of the reasons that the institutional investors are doing this. And they're pushing for it. Some of them are requiring their property managers to hit a certain metric, a certain percentage that are security deposit alternatives. Okay, so what I get asked the most by investors is, why would tenants do that? Because ultimately they're going to end up paying more long term. So at the beginning, we went over a little bit about where rents are. Let me just show you a little bit. I'm going to go through this. These are numbers you know, but I'm going to speak to it from the tenant's perspective. I just moved to California. I have 3 girls and a 4-year-old grandson. We really needed at least a 3-bedroom house. What do? So let's go and see what tenants do. Renting a 2-bedroom apartment, traditional. $2,000 first month's rent, $2,000 security deposit, $2,000 last month's rent. Not all property managers do that, but that's pretty normal. The vast majority do. So you're looking at $6,000 to move in. Renting a 2-bedroom apartment with a security deposit alternative. $2,000 first month's rent, $500 or less for a bond or insurance to cover the last month's rent and security deposit. That would be a one-time fee if they wanted to do it annually. If they wanted to separate it out monthly, they could do that as well. The difference is $3,500. So they would only need $2,500 to move in. So even if you wanted, to your point, John, even if you wanted to say, okay, you know what, we're going to have an additional $1,000 cash that we're going to hold on to just so you have some skin in the game, just to cover a little bit extra in case it's intentional damage, it would still be $3,500 to move in. That's a significant difference. That's purchasing a car, if they only have one car in the family. It's a significant difference for families. Then you have, as I told you the story, Sanjeev, his family that were living in 1 bedroom. If they were looking at trying to get into a 3-bedroom property, really, they're running like $4,000 a month. So you have first month's security deposit, last month's, $12,000 to move in. I don't think I put this in a slide. I looked up numbers today. 36% of families have less than $400 to handle an emergency. And they're trying to come up with $12,000. while at the same time, 56% are paying more than 30% of their income to rent. So when you start looking at those numbers, families are in a situation where you have 3 kids and you're living in a 1-bedroom apartment. So that's why. Is it ideal? Is it in alignment with being an investor? No. If you're an investor, you don't do this kind of stuff. But the majority of people are living life. They have $400 in their savings account. They're just trying to get through to the next day. Do we need them to attend groups like this? Yes, we do. Do we need them to be going and playing cash flow? Yes, we do. And we can work on that. But this is their reality right now. And it's getting worse by, what would I say, 36% in New York, 16% nationally. If they have a security deposit alternative, it's a $7,000 difference. That's a lot of saxophone lessons. That's a lot of dentist appointments, braces. That's the difference. So $5,000 to move in. So to answer the question, that's why tenants are doing it. That's why they're willing to do it. And those are some of the options that are available. And that is why landlords are doing it. That's why especially multifamily owners are doing it. You had a question?
I'm sorry, I think I just missed something. Please forgive me.
No, you're fine.
The premium, the insurance that's helping with this alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Are we charging that every year back to the tenant?
The majority of investors charge it back to the tenant.
So $1,000, we can even break it up
Monthly. Yep.
But we let them know that this is
They're
part deal and this every year.
Yep. Yeah. And typically it's easier for them to handle it monthly. Because again, they have $400 in savings. Yeah.
I haven't got there yet, but I'm thinking in the future,
Yeah. Yes, there was something else I was going to say. Go ahead.
So the security deposit insurance also covers the last month's rent?
It can if they default. So the reason landlords ask for last month's rent is because tenants are in a situation where they have $400 in their bank account and their need, for whatever reason, maybe job change, they're moving 300 miles away. They don't have a choice. And they have to come up with $12,000 before they can make that move. So then tenants are known to not pay their last month's rent because they know the security deposit's there.
Right.
So landlords will often ask for last month and security deposit so that if they do that, they have that last month.
How would you prove it to the insurance company that they're defaulting?
Rent roll. Yeah, you just show, and an eviction notification.
And then tenants not saving money from last month's rent, like you said.
Right, exactly. Any other questions?
Your timing is incredible. It's 8:32. Nice.
I know. She told me I had an hour. I'm like, I don't have that long of an attention span.
I think you will. I think you will. So guys, do you see that this is a new concept? We're all having questions in the room about what it is, what's going to happen. You guys have her information, right? So, and she's going to be here tonight. You're staying?
Yeah.
At least 30 minutes.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I'll be here.
You see the look on her face.
Yeah.
She's like, what?
Of course, I flew in from Atlanta and I stayed.
She did. The last meeting, she flew in from the airport. She drove to the meeting. I'm just saying.
I actually took a bus and a train to get here.
Bus and train?
Yeah, I
didn't
did.
know that.
I was not going to drive at 5 p.m. and try to make it.
Go ahead.
So yes, if you want these slides, which I will include the cap rates if you want that, or I'll forward it to you, text this number. Give me your email address and I'll send you the slides. If you have any questions, more than happy to answer them.
All right, are we good? Okay, give her a hand.
You know, one other thing that I do want to mention, there is a possibility, it does exist, that we could either have a significant downturn in the economy or at some point in time we could actually have enough housing. So the other option for this that isn't as relevant.
Housing?
Could happen. Who was it that was doing development? David Coe?
David
yeah,
Coe, yeah.
him. So the other thing too with this is if someone is building and they're doing a lease-up situation, it's a great opportunity for the owner to have coverage and still be able to do incentives, move-in incentives. Or if we get to a point where it is hard to get tenants, you can do incentives and still have coverage. So that's another aspect that this is going to make a difference.
She will be.